This video has a little introduction. Feel free to skip to the actual video with the timestamp shown on screen. For those who are new here, the introduction basically will explain how these ranking videos usually work. Enjoy! How's it going, everyone? It's Vivi and welcome to Sly Cooper Thieves in Time episodes ranked. As per usual, the ranking of this video will not include boss fights. Actually, boss fights have their own separate rankings, separate videos if you're ever curious. The links will be in the description below. So, the ranking of chapters, or episodes if you want to call it that, solely relies on the gameplay aspect and overall story impression. Also, prologues and epilogues do not count. And the majority of the time, I also take the time to discuss each chapter or episode. Now, to keep it simple, Sly 4's prologue acts as a tutorial phase, jumping, ninja spiral jumping, climbing, and of course, making our way towards the first item needed to time travel. The epilogue of this game, whether or not you consider it a chapter or episode, I'm gonna be real with ya. It was disappointing. The only part worth mentioning is the one where we replay as each ancestor, trying to get their stolen canes back. Afterwards, it's all active time battle. Some rail sliding, yes, but then we get more active time battle. The epilogue just felt like Sanzaru not having enough time to further expand the gameplay. Before I begin, something I'd like to say. Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, I might be in the minority, alright? Not only was each episode aesthetically pleasing, well, it is the PlayStation 3 we're looking at, of course, but each episode felt fun. Yeah, there's some episodes I enjoy more than others, but Sly 4, I have to say, had enjoyable episodes as a whole. Gameplay is the strongest tentpole in this game. There isn't one episode where I am completely hostile towards in terms of gameplay. Gameplay is the keyword here. But since this is a ranking video, I have to rank them. So with that being said, this is it for the introduction part of the video, so let's get started. Starting with number 5, we got 40 Thieves, Ancient Arabia, Episode 5. As always, each episode in this game requires us to rescue or find Sly's ancestor. In this episode, we try and locate Salim's fingerprint DNA, which not only is pretty classical when it comes to the whole theme of heist in Sly Cooper, but it's also a little different, like following the fingerprints to find Salim. That's pretty cool, if you ask me. Then we need to build enough trust and have to get our hands on the thief costume which Salim lost at a point in time due to a camel race. Using this was super fun. Well, basically it was the new form of thief reflexes. Slow down time, while also having the ability to move in real time. Not to mention the suit just looks cool if you look at it. Salim claimed it was owned by a real genie once. Fun fact, Bentley in this scene makes a reference to Matthew de la Couper, wondering if it influenced his slow motion technique. Someone like Cooper, having the focus, can apparently pull it off when it comes to the technique of this suit.
I wonder if it somehow influenced your ancestor Matthew de la Couper's slow motion techniques. In any event, only someone possessing the famed Cooper focus can pull it off.
Eventually, we stumble upon Le Paradox and Miss Decibel. We eavesdrop on their conversation, and it can't get any more classical than that. Impersonating the delivery boy was certainly a memorable moment of this episode. Come on, we're talking about Sly's Italian accent.
Excellent idea, Bentley. And just to ensure it's foolproof, I'm gonna use my...
No, Sly, don't say it!
Italian accent!
I said crazy, Sly, not suicidal.
As we further progress, we play as Salim who utilizes the climbing cobra, which I believe out of all moves in this game, it puts you on the edge. Like you have this feeling of, I gotta make it on time. One thing I certainly don't like remembering is the mission with Bentley, where you use his RC chopper to drop smoke bombs in order for Sly and Salim to, sneak through the turrets. When looking at this episode, you get that feeling that when you don't place yourself properly, you realize you have 3 turrets following you by the time you realize. Afterwards, Attempting to rescue one of Salim's friends, we fall in a trap. Sly's part ain't so bad. Avoid obstacles, you use the thief costume here and there, alright. Murray, well, it just felt tedious and just boring, to keep it simple. Activating a switch requires you to deal with Cannonball afterwards. It's the typical point and shoot. I'm not really a fan of that style of gameplay. You come here and you see a turret and you're like, man, not this again. Sly's part utilized his abilities. I feel this part was a waste of Murray's character. He was minimized to just pretty much activating switches. I mean, it's the Murray we're talking about. Afterwards, we get a reference to Henriette One-Eyed Cooper. It's pretty cool if you ask me.
That priceless treasure is Sinbad's legendary goblet. History tells us it was recovered by your ancestor, Henrietta One-Eye Cooper, the famous female pirate, but not until the year 1616. Taking it now could cause any number of anomalies to the time continuum and the Cooper timeline. You might even prevent yourself from becoming a thief.
Point taken.
Fun moment of this episode, hijacking Miss Decibel's office with transmitters, which will play rock and roll afterwards and drive her crazy. Placing bombs to open pathways as Bentley, and just playing as Salim in this area was pretty fun. It gave you this sense of you gotta be careful. I'm not saying I stand those scorpions, I can't stand them. They're annoying types of enemies. They come rushing towards you like they own the place. Ah yes, Carmelita belly dancing. I think I found this funny more than anything. This is certainly a moment that's brought up in this game when people discuss Sly Cooper Thieves Time. I'm not going to say they ruined Carmelita's character here. She herself hated the idea. She was mad.
Yeah, bust a move, Carmelita.
How about I bust your face, Cooper?
But here's one thing. The team could have come up with something a bit more interesting for Carmelita, and I'm not a really huge fan of the button pressing patterns. It's like they thought, oh, the PlayStation 3 supports the 6-axis, why not use it to have Carmelita shake her hips? I mean, they could have come up with, I think, something more interesting. Carmelita does have a shock pistol, we can't forget about that. So why does this one come at number 5? I'm gonna say it, but it's probably unfair to base my overall thoughts on this, what I'm about to say. Salim just wasn't that interesting of a character. Instead, we got an old man who wants to sleep all the time and eat. Wasted the opportunity to focus on a younger version of him, maybe someone who was like ego-driven, someone who would have never ever listened to Sly because he's that egotistical. But like I just said, I feel it's unfair to base my thoughts of the episode on Salim's character alone. To put it simply, some gameplay segments felt tedious or just overall boring, but the award does go to the Italian accent.
Other boys are out to seek. Something about the snake bites.
Is there something wrong with your voice?
No, I've been talking like this my whole life.
That never gets old. And multiple references to the series, of course. So yeah, with that said, we move on to number 4. Clan of the Cave Raccoon, 10,000 BC, Episode 3. The episode begins with the typical recon photo scenario. This time we're looking for pieces of the time machine. Eventually, Bentley picks up on something. We discover the Grizz, who we later realize was keeping Bob Cooper imprisoned. We steal the Sabretooth costume, use its mechanic to land flat on platforms which we cannot reach. Just looking at this area, it's visually pleasing to the eye. I'm a sucker for winter-themed levels, let alone icy-themed levels. This area was certainly a satisfying turn of events. Fly like the saber-tooth that you are, and boom, flat, we rescue Bob, and eventually realize he's just completely out of shape. This is a segment I personally enjoyed. Maybe this is a part you didn't really enjoy, maybe you found like it was too slow, or like you reached a barrier in this episode. Whatever you thought about this part, I personally enjoyed it. I found it super fun, but I have to say, the most stressful minigame in this segment is the one that required the 6-axis. Back then, the 6-axis was still trendy, I guess, so they thought they had to use it. 2 of these minigames, the one where you bash the penguins and the slingshot, I mean, both require rhythm and timing. At first, it might be annoying, but you really do get the hang of it. As we further make progress, the tempo starts picking up, and you get this rush within you. The slapping motion here, I just can't. The first time I saw this, I'm like, nice, clever. What I also liked here for our character Murray, he was Bob's coach, using positive reinforcement, a character who seems confident in himself. Murray did go through a period of low self-esteem when Bentley got his legs crushed. Murray's been through that patch before. But then here, when Murray tries to climb and can't, his attitude surprised me. He just completely acts the opposite of the character we believed he was. For someone who had the positive mental attitude to train Bob Cooper, he gets all sad because he gets benched? It's like his sense of self-respect as a character or dignity is thrown at the window. He should be more confident in his own abilities, and yet, it's like they rewind the character. We only see Murray, I guess, pulling himself together while facing Grizz. I don't know, this part was pretty questionable in this episode. So yeah. We then move to the wall climbing segment with Bob, putting this character's abilities to use. Then we have Murray chasing after the penguins. Not so fun. Just trying to grab these little suckers was such a pain, especially when you don't have enough corners to surround them in. The mission with Bentley trying to put a homing beacon on Grizz was certainly a lengthy gameplay segment. Not bad, since I don't mind controlling Bentley. Exploring ice caves certainly looks pretty, but also comes with a slight annoyance. And what I mean by this is do keep an eye on your surroundings and don't just assume you can make it across. You gotta go back and do a complete detour if you fall to the ground. What's cool about this mission? You use thermovision to try and locate the Grizz. Not only that, there's also a little puzzle solving, trying to find which icon to shoot. And how do you know which ones to shoot? You look around. It does get a bit slower at this point. You get all the gems from the guards. If you get caught, you gotta do it all over. Then you have a timed mission shooting a homing dart on Grizz's butt. It certainly gives you this rush, the timer, the ice walls, and everything. We then have Sly following Grizz when he throws a temper tantrum on Paradox. That was pretty, funny to listen to.
Oh, you think I'm scared of you? Only thing scary about you is smell!
We then enter his lair. We have shared segments with Bentley, Bob, and Sly. Whenever we have a segment where more than one character is involved, I mean, it's good. I like it. Now, why is this at number 4? I like the winter icy theme. Navigating this map, however, is tricky sometimes, especially when following the Grizz. And let's not forget the lack of Carmelita gameplay. Like, I understand she was frustrated at Sly, but what was she doing the whole time? And then of course you have Murray's questionable attitude in the episode. It left me confused. So yeah, with that said, we move on to number 3. Of Mice and Mechs, Medieval England, Episode 4. The episode starts with Bentley needing particular material to craft a suit for Sly, one which would allow him to enter the circus. What I love about this episode, we get to hear the guards have the most casual conversation ever. With that, we get our first hint. Head to the tavern, find the material we need by sneaking through a bunch of guards, and I mean, talk about traditional Sly formula here. What's cool about these conversations? There's some little Easter eggs in them, at least I think so. Kramer, as in Matt Kramer, creative lead at Sanzaro Games. We get our second material, not complicated. Then we overhear the third conversation between the guards. This time, we hear the name Bryner. It might not ring bells, and I don't blame ya. During the Paris prologue, while with Bentley in the sewers, paying close attention to the chalkboard, we see the name Bryner Noggin, with plans written all over the board. I do remember making a video on this a while back. It certainly makes you wonder of who this Bryner character is. Like, the Bryner they mentioned, was this character someone who used to work for Paradox? I mean, all these little potential nods to, you know, these mysterious characters and whatnot, it was certainly peak moments for me for this episode. After more obstacles and getting the third piece, Bentley crafts an archer suit, and I have to say it's my favorite one. Sly shooting arrows just felt like so much fun, and the outfit itself looks pretty cool as well. Inside the circus, we use a lot of arrows to bypass platforms and areas which we cannot reach. Another cool reference I'd like to make, these drawings of Sir Galeth, the ones you notice before we get to rescue him. These drawings, fun fact, they were originally Sir Robin's, the original idea for Sir Gallus' episode. This artwork I put up on screen is by Genevieve Tsai, one of the additional artists who worked on Sly 4. You can actually find a little background over on her blog. Before there was Sir Gallus, there was Sir Robin. These are the original banners I did for the circus tent before the character was changed to Sir Gallus. The story behind this was that Sir Robin was held prisoner and is forced to go through horrible circus acts as torture. I wanted to give these banners a dark, humorous spin on family-friendly entertainment ads. You wonder, who would Sir Robin be? Sir Gallus, we're aware of this name being part of Sly's ancestry. But Sir Robin? Could that character have been Sir Gallus' son? It makes you wonder. I did make a separate video in the past as well, going over some of the artwork of this artist. If you're ever curious, I'll leave the link in the description below. Now, jumping on those horns emit different musical notes. I certainly had lots of fun doing so. We find Sir Gallus eventually. Already, I can tell he's the loudest, most obnoxious ancestor yet, and I love it. He's so full of himself, thinking he can deal with whatever is out there. This guy has strength. I mean, the fact that Murray also has to pull on him, I mean, he could have handled everything on his own, maybe. We have a mission with Sly where we have to secretly follow the Black Knight and get rid of the guards. It reminds me of the mission from Sly 2, by the way. I basically enjoyed redoing something like this in order to retrieve Sir Gallus' cane. There's just something so satisfying when using Sir Gallus' catapult crush technique to disable all those monitoring blimps. It's all fun and games until you fall off the platform. You gotta redo it all over. Before we enter another mission with Sir Gallus, we get a bit of tension between Carmelita and Sly. Sly wondering why she's got Sir Gallus back. Some might feel like Sly was completely out of character here, but you have to realize that these two were dating for quite some time. I just took this as Sly getting a bit insecure here. Something we don't really see from Sly. Plus, this could have been a result of what's already been going on with Carmelita with another ancestor in the previous episode. I think it's a matter of personal perspective as to how you perceive these two characters together. I just simply wasn't too bothered or annoyed by Sly's character here. Before dealing with the moat monster, we have to go through this huge tower maze. Compared to Bob's mission, this one requires more patience, especially since we have to use his catapult technique a lot here. Let's just say this is a mission I wouldn't like repeating. Once we make it to the top, Gallus attempts to swing his sword. It's a nice comedic sort of relief we got here. Then we play as Carmelita. Playing as Carmelita is always a welcomed addition. We also have a section with Murray, throwing guards in grinders. Pretty brutal for a game which is rated E10 and up. We get more archery with Sly, laser obstacles with Gallus, and it's all classic, if you ask me. Lasers, am I right? Bentley soon realizes Penelope was the Black Knight. This was, I think, the breaking point for a lot of Sly Cooper fans. Why do this to Penelope? What happened? What was Sanzaro Games thinking? I personally wasn't bothered. It's part of her nature after all. She was originally part of the AC's competition in Sly 3 as the Black Baron, and in that game she already seemed like a brutal sort of character when she was dressing as Black Baron. Now what I do think, this betrayal of hers needed more weight to it, like more background, better development. Look, I love Sly using arrows, but this I'd like to forget. Just no, please. Just the slow response time of raising the arrow, just shooting it afterwards, it can ruin your momentum if you're not careful. I thought the gang didn't know how to swim. What is this, Murray? Alright, so why is this at number 3? I love using the archer suit, overall. Just the theme of this place, along with the Easter eggs, was really something I loved. Only nitpick, of course, was that mini-game with Sly and the catapult technique here and there. So let's move on to number 2. Turning Japanese, Feudal Japan, Episode 1. As usual, we have recon photos to take. One thing I can say, the design of this level is one of the things I always like to think back to. The colors, the water flowing, and everything. The lush and dense environment of this episode. Very nice. We eventually steal armor bits from guards, needed to craft our samurai suit. Once we do so, Sly calls himself Major Mugshot.
Why, I am Major Mugshot.
Huh? Mugshot? I've never heard of you.
I love that reference to good old Mugshot. We sneak around, pass some guards, go through some pretty wild obstacles. I mean, there isn't anything particularly interesting about this costume, it's just very, very slow. And then finally we stumble upon Ryuichi Cooper. Already we can tell he's a pretty chill, laid-out character. His first mission, we get inside his restaurant. To get back the knives the guards took away. He needs those knives to produce sushi and get his restaurant status back in action. And here, of course, we have Bentley just confused about the way Ryuichi speaks sometimes. I loved that.
Bentley-san, though the bamboo forest is dense, water flows through it without effort.
Okay. What's cool about his restaurant, you can notice some pictures of what appears to be a younger version of him. Fun fact, there's actually a story tied to these illustrations. Again, according to Genevieve's blog. Here's a fun and weird one. In the Japan-level sushi house, you can find these various banners and murals hanging on the walls and structures. Because they were just background pieces that might not be noticed at first glance, I had the freedom to play with the story a little. I wanted to tell a silly random story of how Ryuichi started his sushi house. Read left to right, top to bottom. You can read the full story on her blog. The link is in the description below. Eventually, we end up inside the Sashimi Caverns. This is one segment I always think about first. When looking back at episode 1, I mean, it's just so pretty. And sometimes annoying, yes. Especially using the 6-axis to capture fish. It's literally a game of patience. Hang in there. That last part with Murray and the bucket. He's susceptible to falling in that crack. I've seen it happen. In other gameplays, it's happened to me as well. Eventually, we want to retrieve Madame Geisha's suit. Bentley believing that El Jefe likes to talk to her, you know, by someone wearing that suit for El Jefe, we might get potential info. We sneak through the geisha house. As Ryuichi, oh, did I forget to mention, I love the leaping dragon technique. I just love the fast-paced movement. Oh, and then Murray shows up. Since he loves to cross-dress, he thought it was his turn to shine. The one thing I like to remember from this segment, that look of utter confusion on Ryuichi's face. The first time I played this, I was confused more than anything, but I was also laughing at the same time. The one thing that bothered me here, the button pressing. Generally, I'm never a fan of this type of gameplay. In later missions, we use Bentley's RC cart. I mean, I love this environment. Using the chicken cover-up to get past those guards, and overhear El Jefe reveal crucial information, was a pretty nice, fun mission. Murray eventually steals the map of the plan, you know, to steal canes, and then who knows what happened to poor Murray. Like, oof. Sly opens the gate, we enter, we then end up fighting a bunch of guards as Murray. One thing that would have been even better here, if the game had made us transition between the three, Sly, Murray, and Bentley, you know, actually control all of them, it would have been even more interesting. Instead, we're stuck using Murray throughout. While this happens, Ryuichi opens the gate. This little section is certainly iconic, all characters following Ryuichi. It gives you this feeling of accomplishment. Why is episode 1 at number 2? Well, just the missions overall weren't too tedious, the visuals and just the overall feel of this level is something I definitely enjoyed. And you know, let's not forget when Ryuichi talks to Bentley. So with that said, we finally move on to number 1. Go West Young Raccoon, The Wild West, episode 2. This one's easily my favorite. From where do I even start? Well, I guess let's just do the usual stuff, go over the episode a bit and, you know, get into it slowly. Our first mission requires us to throw ourselves in jail in order to communicate with Tennessee Kid Cooper. This mission was completely unexpected. Throwing ourselves in jail? I mean, come on, that was surprising in a good way. So what do? We run around the place and completely ruin, sabotage Toothpick's posters. We get captured.
Me wee cannonballs!
Bentley takes recon photos to study the prison area as to how we can escape afterwards. Then we encounter Tennessee Kid Cooper, my favorite ancestor out of the bunch, I have to say. I love using the jailbird costume also. Not just to smash through walls, but rolling on it as well. Just smashing stuff with it is satisfying. This part with Tennessee is all about puzzles and mazes. I certainly did enjoy this segment. Well, not the part where Toothpick just won't stop talking in the background. Like he just won't stop talking.
Howdy! It's time for the annual photo and my birthday. Transport built, so you all need to keep your mouth shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up.
Anyway, anytime we have two characters on screen, it just feels more interactive. I don't know, but it does feel that way. Following Toothpick with Bentley sneaking around, I mean giving the honor to Bentley sneaking around instead of Sly? Why not? More Bentley the better. There's nothing against that. By doing so with Bentley, we finally find Tennessee's cane and thus comes the magic. Well, before the magic, we have scorpions to deal with again. Murray, behind the turret, not too interesting. What I mean by magic. Tennessee's cane is my utmost favorite cane mechanic in this game. Just the uniqueness factor of this cane certainly gives new and fresh style of gameplay. Locking on switches, just shooting objects, it just feels different and yet awesome. The crack shot technique. Do I have anything bad to say about it? Not really. The sound of the click of his gun when focusing on each target, it's a nice click sound. Rail sliding. This move was invented by him after all. Fast-paced travel? Would I ever say no to that? I do not think so. The vault mission or the mines overall I'd say is my favorite part of this episode. Well, there's another one, but I like this one a lot. Fast-paced travel via rail sliding, mixed with gun shooting, sneaking around behind crates to shoot guards down. Also the fact that this area is very interactive. Instead of just barging in and swinging your cane around, you can decide to deal with enemies in a more strategic fashion. I did enjoy this bar mission with Bentley. Why? Because the controls were very minimalistic. Just use the analog stick to move left and right, and press X to give out beer. If this had required us to use more button pressing sequences, well, it would have probably been a different story. It's really a matter of eye coordination, come to think of it, when it comes to this minigame. Pretty much. By getting all the guards hammered, Sly would more easily sneak into the saloon, and plant a bug in Toothpick's office. I gotta say, exploring this area as Sly is pretty cool. Just the design on the walls and the aesthetic of this place is great. Once we listen in on Toothpick's conversation, it certainly takes a dark turn in this scene. It just shows how brutal of a bad guy Toothpick really is. Accidentally shoots one of his goons and he really doesn't care. Then we have a mission with Tennessee. He spots a lady, Carmelita, who he deems a pretty lady. Bentley freaks out and says that's no lady, that's Carmelita. Bentley's surprised reaction in this really added lots of tension to this scene. Bentley wasn't ready to expect something like this, so he feels Tennessee can reach her the fastest. Toothpick is so full of himself in this scene, like gifting someone with something only later on to realize that they're abusing it. Toothpick is a character you love to hate, in other words. And this is one example of that. Now we have to save Carmelita. We rail slide, crack shot a lot, and the first half it's doable, not too overwhelming. But the final phase, well, around that point, it can get a bit overwhelming. If you blindly focus on targets before inspecting the area by simply moving your camera around, you'll end up frantically looking around while focusing, resulting in running out of time. You really have to be sure where you're going to aim first, but you also have to be quick. Tennessee and Carmelita have this awkward, cute little dynamic going on, something I won't ever forget about this episode. Tennessee is all formal, kind, innocent, and then Carmelita just shouts at him.
Stop calling me ma'am! The name's Inspector Fox!
That look on his face. Poor dude. Our duo eventually team up to try and rescue Sly and the gang. Tennessee wondering how Carmelita even got mixed up with Sly. Yeah, that's something we all wonder. When Tennessee calls Carmelita feisty and tells her you remind me of this gal, you can't help but wonder, could he have been referring to maybe an ancestor of hers? A bit cliche, I know, but that line of his, that remark of Tennessee, it stood out for sure. This part of the gameplay involves sections with Carmelita and Tennessee, of course. Carmelita's point and shoot, however, more interesting this time. What I mean to say is, I prefer this over using, a cannon that overheats. And then we have Tennessee exactly doing what we had in the caves. Sneaking around, dealing with guards, activating switches to, allow us to further progress. As for the Toothpick Appreciation Festival, we need 3 keys to collect, each tied to 3 contestants from 3 contests. A brawl for Murray. Punching our way out with Murray is always a classic. Sly with his jailbird suit, it's a race. Hey, I love using this costume, so I didn't mind. Shooting competition with Carmelita. Look, I love playing as Carmelita, but this is the type of point and shoot that can get frustrating. Yeah, this does remind me of the Archer minigame, by the way. Albeit faster reaction time. Once we have the 3 keys, Tennessee used them to divert the train. After that, we play as Murray trying to free the van, and I'm surprised that the TNT didn't cause any sort of damage to the van. After the segment with Murray, we have Carmelita playing her part, as usual, in getting rid of the guards, shooting. Then we have Tennessee. Anything that involves a train heist is always a bonus. This was the other favorite part I was talking about in the beginning. This really gave me a lot of Sly 2 vibes. Add Tennessee's crack shot technique and call it a day. So finally, why did I put this at number 1? Easy. The map design. The mechanics with Tennessee. The jailbird suit segments were quite enjoyable. On top of classical rooftop traversal, we have the option to fast travel via the rails. Carmelita's presence and dynamic between her and Tennessee. Toothpick certainly felt very present with our gang throughout this episode. While his only presence that felt obnoxious was his voice during this section. And Tennessee, of course, is my favorite ancestor. While that part shouldn't really be a factor in my decision making, but alas. I think you understand why this comes at number 1. So with that being said, folks, this is it for the Sly Cooper episodes ranked saga. Thank you for always tuning in, thank you for your support, and as usual, leave your own little list of top episodes. Which one did you enjoy the most? Which one did you dislike the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below, and as always, I've been Vivi, and until next time.